Hey, are you ready to grow your business? You have checked out the #1 resource for business leaders, entrepreneurs, startup founders, and managers. And we're going to teach you how to grow and scale your business with real actionable steps. There's no fluff in this podcast. It's just good advice. Check out this episode. If you're a first-time listener, make sure you subscribe to the podcast. And if you enjoy this episode, leave us a 5-star review. Today's episode is with Rick West, who's the CEO and co-founder of Field Agent, one of our incredible businesses here in Northwest Arkansas. Rick's been an entrepreneur for almost 20 years now. We talk all about the startup journey, from getting customers who care about your product to actually funding and scaling the business. All that and more is on today's episode. Hey, make sure you check out about Field Agent at fieldagent.net. And hey, stay tuned. Here comes your good advice. All right. Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Good Advice Podcast. You know, we've had so many amazing guests on the podcast, and I got to tell you, I'm pretty jazzed about today's episode because it's not some random business that's phoning in and talking about, what they're doing wherever they are in the United States. I get to sit down with a local company. Crazy. Yeah. I mean, it's actually, I'll say more as once we get into the episode, kind of how this all came together, but we're sitting down with Rick today, who's the CEO and co-founder of Field Agents. Yeah. And I know Field Agent's doing a lot of really cool stuff. For our listeners, if you're not familiar with Field Agent, you can think of Field Agent like its name. It connects you with your actual buyers for your retail store, gets important feedback, data, analytics, and really informs your entire sales process for your products. You can probably hear we're actually in his office right on the back of a train station.
Crazy. We're in an old Coca-Cola bottling plant.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And back in the day, and it has to be right near a rail yard, so you've now experienced the train.
I wish I could say we timed it, but I mean, I think it's just great flavor for the podcast. Field Agent's an amazing company, has about 100 employees. They're expanding to a new marketplace, which we're going to talk about in the episode today. And this is actually my second conversation with Rick, who I loved our first conversation. Rick, so many great insights in that first conversation. And I'm excited for today just to help our listeners understand the process of entrepreneurship better, business ownership, and more importantly, running a business at scale.
Yeah.
I mean, multiple markets, multiple services. I think we're going to get a lot done today. Yeah. First things first, how are you doing today?
Doing great today. Living the dream. I just had a birthday. We won't talk about the number.
Yeah, we'll just say 35.
I just had a birthday this weekend, and in my household, we get birthday weeks.
Okay.
So we're day 3 into my birthday week, feeling really, really good.
Now, for the birthday week, do you build up, is the last day the biggest day, or is it?
As I've told my kids, is that it's okay to be day 3 or day 4 and still get favors, still get a little bit of love. And so hey, it's my birthday. I shouldn't have to do that. Mm-hmm. And that's okay. For about a week, you get to be treated a little special. And so in my household, since it's my wife and I, our kids are kind of moved on, it's for the two of us saying, well, what do you want to watch? Mm-hmm. What do you want to eat? Where do you want to go? It's like, wow, this is kind of my week.
Yeah.
This is my birthday week.
Now, do you guys have a birthday restaurant that it's I have to make sure I go to this place?
No, for the longest time that the kids loved Shogun because of all the craziness that was going on there. Yeah. But for the most part now, we're local business, and we try to do interesting local things. And we went to a little place in Prairie Grove called Coyles, Coyles, Coles.
Yeah, okay.
And it was comfort food.
Yeah.
It was, like meatloaf, sweet tater fries, cornbread. And it was really like a soul food, comfort food kind of thing that brought us back to our roots. And so it was a fantastic meal.
Well, we do birthday weeks also. Now, I had a friend of mine who his wife did birthday month.
That's a lot.
And he would always building up to it. You could kind of know it was coming because you'd get him for coffee and he'd be like, oh yeah, things are going okay. And you'd find out that he was actually prepping. He was exhausted.
That's so good.
Getting ready for birthday month.
Yeah.
And she wouldn't let it slip. I mean, she would be like, don't forget it's birthday month coming up. But so I just had a new boy. And
congratulations.
Thank you. My toddler, her birthday was earlier in March. And so we were thinking about, okay, we have to make sure there's a week gap between them.
Right.
Otherwise, it's going to mess up this whole birthday week thing.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Now, Rick, I appreciate you mentioning going to a local business, going to a local restaurant. I feel like since COVID, this has been at the forefront of my mind of supporting local businesses. Right. I mentioned already, it's pretty amazing to be able to have you and Field Agent represented on the podcast. And for our listeners, in case you're wondering like the process for how these podcasts sort of happen, sometimes I have guests that I ask on because I know them. I'm really impressed with them. You and I didn't have a relationship before the podcast, so I wouldn't have known you to say, hey, come on the podcast. And then there is a lot of third-party podcast booking companies that basically connect amazing professionals with amazing podcasts, like the Good Advice Podcast. And for me personally, this is typically people all over the United States in various companies. Well, your name came across my desk, so to speak, and I thought, oh my gosh. And if I could be honest, especially there's a couple of third-party services that I have a personal relationship with. A lot of times when these inquiries come through, I just ignore them because which sounds so bad.
Well, it's a volume game.
It's so many that come in on a daily basis. Well, I saw your name. I saw Field Agent. I thought, oh my gosh, I have to get
He's
Rick.
Just down the street.
Yeah, I have to get him on. Yeah. Well, just because local businesses. I want to support local businesses. All that to say, tell the listeners a little bit about who you are and what Field Agent does.
Yeah, the easiest way to think about our world and Field Agent, there's kind of two worlds that we live in. The first piece is you download our app, and if you're a user of the app, think of it being like a mystery shopper, secret shopper. You can go into a store, you can take a couple of photos, and we pay you cold, hard cash, okay? You'll never be the mayor of Field Agent. You'll never get a badge. We can pay you cash. Or we have you buy a product and try it and do a ratings and review. Or maybe we just ask you for your insights inside of your home or inside of a store. So secret shopper kind of things while you're out and about, make an extra $2, $5, $10, $20 this weekend by doing simple tasks. On the other side, you've got brands all over the world. We operate in the United States and 7 other countries that are saying, I'd like to know what's going on in this retailer or inside of this home. And because of the scale that we have, 2 million downloads, if there's a zip code in the United States, we're active. And within literally hours and days versus weeks and months, you can have real data from real shoppers coming back to a brand or a retailer or a quick serve restaurant. And that's the two economies that we operate in from the world of Field Agent.
And you do a handful of analytics with that data too, because I've even seen like on LinkedIn, you guys publishing consumer insights for different, verticals.
Sure.
And I, as someone who I don't sell anything, but I find myself clicking and reading and being like, oh, that's just because it's interesting to me. It's like, meat products are up.
It's fantastic.
It's just. And
we operate within a thing called a marketplace. You kind of inferred that earlier. Our marketplace allows us to take these services, the services we've turned into products, so that the average person, whether you're a startup entrepreneur and you're just trying to talk to 100 people that you aren't related to get truth about your product, right? You never want to ask your mom, dad, brother, and sister, and best friend and spouse because they're going to tell you, baby's really cute.
Oh, yeah.
And you and I both know most babies look like aliens. There are very few babies that are born looking like
it's like that Seinfeld episode where it's like, baby's so ugly.
It is. So you can come into our marketplace, and within a couple of clicks, you can go directly to a cart, and you can get responses back to understand whether or not you have an interesting product or not. Or you're a large-scale brand and you're trying to get into 1,000 or 5,000 locations, or you need 1,000 ratings and reviews. The marketplace allows you to click, and go to cart. And Blake, we're literally the first marketplace B2B marketplace that has a cart that you can check out. It's not click to a friend, click to a demo, click to call. And that's the piece we've been working on the last 18 months is to Amazonify this B2B world so that you can click to cart. And it's been really, really cool.
That's really cool. And, something that you mentioned, I loved your comment about, because this is tough for newer businesses and younger businesses, is ultimately what do my customers really think about what I sell? And I think there's 3 groups that people fall into. There is like, the narcissist who's like, I had a guy who was like, oh, what we sell, it's basically Amazon, but better. And I was like, really? It's better than a $1 trillion? Of
course it is.
Yeah. Okay. So, and then there's the group of people who are afraid. They're not sure about the product, but they're afraid to get customer insights because, when you're starting out, you're a little sensitive to your baby, right? But I love how you mentioned, being careful who you talk to. There's a great book called Passing the Mom Test. Okay. And it's basically whenever you launch a product, getting insight from your customers rather than your mom. Because like you said, your mom's going to be like, oh, they'd be crazy not to buy from you or, what have you. And then there's the third group, which is what I think you're talking about, where they are desperate isn't the right word. It's like so intentionally committed to getting customer feedback. Right. What do my customers really think? And so I just appreciate how Field Agent is fitting such an important essential need for not just retail, but for all businesses. I mean, we all really need that kind of insight. Is this something that you cared about early on in the business world, or how did this come about? Yeah,
so part of it for us, let me give you the best piece of advice I've ever received, and we're going to tell you how this thing came about. So there's a local guy here. His name is Stephen Graves, Dr. Graves. Great consulting business, and so we're starting out week one. He said, I'm going to give you that one thing. If you've ever seen City Slickers, the old movie talks about that one thing. He said,
City Slickers 2, City Slickers 3, they're all good.
The one thing.
The one thing.
He said, in business, especially as an entrepreneur, you are only as good as you invoice and collect. If you can't do that, it's an expensive hobby.
Yeah.
And you just look at it and say, yeah, what? No, he said, no, don't go past this.
Yeah.
And then we got into the conversation, which is, sure, it's a great product because your friends said it's great, but have you gone to a complete stranger without, say, this is awesome, isn't it? You don't ask a leading question, and you put it in front of them, and if they get out their credit card or and they Venmo you $50, if they engage you, he said you've got something. But if you can't take a complete stranger that has a problem and your solution solves the problem and they're not going to pay you, you're in the wrong business. This is a really expensive habit. And so that hobby, that's the first amazing piece of advice he received.
And I think, and I don't want to interrupt you, but if I can just pause here, because I think the door to stepping into entrepreneurship has never been easier. I mean, it's so, you can register your business.
Technology.
Yeah, 24 hours it takes to really start a business.
Yeah.
And I think, this is really, your advice is really great because it's a common one in the startup community. It actually reminds me of when I started my business originally. I was talking to a marketer and he said, well, have you validated that you're selling what people want? And I was like, oh yeah, of course. Yeah. I quit my job for it. Of course. Yeah. And he said, the next question, he said, so who's paid you for it? Oh, well.
Yeah. And in the ecosystem we live in, and if you followed a guy that there's a co-founder of Terminus, his name is Sangram, and he talks through in his latest book, The Move, is that you've got three fits. You've got a problem market fit. Like there is a problem and my product fits. Then you've got a product market fit, which means, the product would be viable. And then there's a kind of a marketplace or a platform market fit that people want to buy it the way you want to sell it to them. And most people are like, well, of course, I've got a problem market fit because there's a problem. Everyone wants my solution. Well, you've got to go to the second phase and say, but do they like the product the way you solve it?
Right.
And then how are they going to buy it? Is it priced right? Is it those three buckets are really, really important because we stay focused on the other ones. Like, of course, there's a problem. Why wouldn't you want to do that? So that's really how Field Agent got started. We had been doing some entrepreneurial work for about 10 years. We had 5 LLCs that we're managing, marketing company, shopper research company. My wife was involved. She was running the research company, and we had a warehouse. We were building brands, just living the dream. But it was kind of a boutique entrepreneurial lifestyle business.
Yeah.
Hey, you can grow the business when Rick or Henry come to the boardroom because we're the partners. We want more business. And we needed to solve a problem, which is getting out into stores and homes to do research because we're flying all over the United States to make it happen. And so this is pre-selfie.
Yeah.
Okay? No front-facing camera.
How old is this business?
Crazy. So this was 2009. The iPhone 3S had just come out. The App Store was probably 4 or 5 months old. And so we're looking on our iPhone 3S's fantastic camera, 2-megapixel camera.
Yeah.
It was the rage, man.
Yeah.
The rage.
Yeah.
But again, unless you jailbroke your phone, you couldn't even do video. So we're all Googling on our phones, even though our computers, we're still Googling on the phone because it was really cool to do that. Trying to find a provider that was using this smart device to capture data at a store or something inside of someone's home. They weren't doing it. It's January. By June, we're like, let's check it again. No one's doing this. We said, we're going to be like those guys that said they invented Instagram but didn't have time to launch it. So, listen, those guys, I'm the Instagram guy. It's like, no, you're not. Oh, you had a party. You're like, oh, well, I had the idea first.
Yeah.
We're going to be idiots. I mean, you want to be those guys. So we started working nights and weekend again. Crazy. I mean, we're running 5 companies. Everything's doing really, really well. Working nights and weekends again. And then April 2010, Blake, we were the first app on iTunes to pay cash.
The first. Wow.
All the other apps on iTunes, you would download the app, and the business model was to click on an ad.
Yeah.
Because you wanted eyeballs on it. And we were saying, gosh, we're going to flip it and say, we're not going to have you do any ads. You're just simply going to come in, download the app, and then we're going to pay you to take a photo or pay you to give an opinion. People are like, that's just crazy that this phone lets me make money.
Yeah.
And then we were the first firm to use geolocation and metadata to qualify the data. Now, this is 2 months before Uber launched.
Yeah. Wow.
So it was the wild, wild west. And then we launched it as a product for a research company.
Yeah.
Well, 6 months later, we're like, oh my gosh, this could scale. So we got rid of the LLCs, got rid of all the other companies, acquired my wife, put the company underneath Field Agent, and just lowered our heads. And for the last 12 years have been, pounding this crowdsourced model, creating a broader marketplace for people to have kind of a one-stop shop, for retail solutions. And so that's what's been driving us.
Did you bootstrap it? Did you
bootstrap for about, 3 or 4 years. We reached a point where we knew we needed some cash. I'll tell you another story. If you've watched your Shark Tank guy.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So imagine us going on the road a little bit to pitch to private equity firms.
Yeah.
And I can remember this company, it was Sovereign Capital. Fantastic guys. Henry Kessner still runs it. It's an investment firm, and we're sitting in this boardroom, and we're making our pitch, and we're feeling pretty good about the pitch. And this guy raised his hand. He said, hey, Rick, let me pause for a second. He said, I don't think you can do this. And I'm like, and Henry's looking, he said, what? He said, I just don't think you can be the CEO that's going to do this. I said, really? He said, because I can tell by your background of where you grew up. I can tell by the bootstrapping you've been done. We're going to give you $2 or $3 million, and I think you're going to save it. I think you're going to watch every penny, and you're going to spend it really, really well. A private equity guy comes in and said, I gave you $2.5 million, and it's now a year from now. Why haven't you spent it to grow the company?
Right.
He said, can you do that? I said, wow, that's a fair point. Now, we didn't work out with Sovereign's, great guy. 5 Elms Capital came along, and we did a Series A and a follow-on with them. So we've raised $4.5 million. But it is not for the faint of heart to have $2-3 million sitting in an account, and you realize you have to spend it.
Yeah.
And so that was our first foray into the business world of private equity. Fast forward a few years, we've kind of been bootstrapping again, and where we are, COVID let us kind of slow down a little bit and do some things. But the cash was really, really good. We've had great partners with 5 Elms, but it's not for the faint of heart.
Now, pausing there for a second, and I do want to go back to your origin story here in a second. But talking about seed funding, Series A, B, C, et cetera, that the investment world for people's startups, it feels like something I really value about your business, and it's tying it back to your comment on, I have something that people want, and I know they want it because there's cash involved. It's happening.
Yep.
It feels like the startup community today is addicted to running to that seed conversation, that Series A conversation. I would just say seed conversation because 9 times out of 10 it's a startup that's never sold anything, doesn't have any, but somehow they have a valuation of, they've never sold anything, but they have a valuation. Exactly. And it almost feels like and this, I guess, it's not even really that insightful of a comment, other
No.
than it just feels like so here's a great example. I sat down with a guy who he was selling a product. It was like a barbershop product. And he was like, what do you think about it? What's your opinion on it? And I was like handling it over, and it seemed fine. It was great. And I said, well, how many have you sold? And he said, I haven't sold any yet. And I said, okay, well, what are you wanting me for? And he said, hey, I want you to help me get investors for it. And I said, well, you're kind of jumping a little bit here. You're putting the cart before the horse a little bit, because you're looking for investors that no one has so far communicated there's value in. Right. But in our conversation, I couldn't get him to see the point I was making, which was, hey, if you want others to see value in this, you need to show value. We've had this many customers. This is what it looks like, et cetera. Why does it seem like the entrepreneurial community is so keen to jump to that investor conversation rather than how do I really craft this product into something customers want?
You get your name in the paper, and you get your name on a banner because you've raised money. That's number one. Number one.
That's true.
I've raised money.
Yeah.
Well, you must be really smart.
Yeah.
And so you have to use the Shark Tank analogy because it's so true. And again, it's a 10-minute clip of a 4-hour conversation, but it's so true. Yeah. You'll see some people get money when the product and idea doesn't make sense at all, but they love them as an entrepreneur, and I'm going to invest in that. And sometimes they say, I'm going to invest in you as long as you promise to scrap the product. Like, what?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to invest in you. But for the most part, when you get that big idea, they're like, you don't have any sales. For me to do this, I'd need like 80% of the company. Mm-hmm. They're like, no, I want to give you 10% of this idea. And so we don't have a real company yet. And those are the conversations I have, especially with people in college that haven't worked yet, have this really big idea, and they want someone to give them a lot of money so they can go on and work for the next couple of years and have the idea. And I've said, no, I want my money to go into marketing and sales. They said, no, I just need some cash so I can survive to keep working on my idea.
Yeah.
I'm like, you don't have a company yet. It's not investable. And so I use that also from kind of a ministry example. We have a couple of ministries we work with, and there one is in India. You've got a person A saying, hey, I want to go work with the marginalized in the leper colony in Rajpur, India. And I want to go over there. Me and my wife, it's going to be great. We're going to raise funds. And I'm like, well, are you helping the poor today? No. But I want to go over there.
But I will if you,
But I will there because it'd be really cool. And I said, well, but you do realize that there's poor people here.
Yeah.
If you would make the effort here and be a good steward of what's been given to you here, then if I put you in the leper colony, you're going to succeed. Right. It's like, no, you understand, man. I've been called to go do that. And so I got an entrepreneur I'm talking to in a few weeks, and he's already given the business plan. Needs $500,000. And I'm like, hasn't sold the first thing. He's got an idea. I need you to buy these 3 assets and this, go fund that, and I need some money to live on. I'm like, what world are you in? It's this. And so one more little baby tangent for you.
Yeah, go for it.
Talked to the other guy the other day. He came in and said, hey, here's what I'm thinking. I said, weren't you just let go by your company? Didn't you get a severance package? Oh, yeah. I said, well, let's pretend like you're making $100,000 a year because I can do the math easily. And you got 4 or 5 months severance. What did you do with the 40, 50 grand? Mm-hmm. Well, I'm hanging out, spend some time with friends and family, can find myself. I'm looking for another job. I said, but you're pitching an idea and you're looking for $50,000 to $100,000. I think your old company just gave you angel money.
Yeah.
And he just looked at me. I said, that's how we started North Star. Myself, my wife, Henry, Bill, we all had separation packages of over a year's salary, and we used that as seed money, as angel money. And this guy's like, huh. I said, so what are you spending the money on? I said, well, I'm just kind of living on it. I'm like, don't.
Yeah.
Go start your business. I want to use somebody else's money for that. See, and so this whole thing of raising the money, and we get back to the foundational piece that you and I talked about earlier. You've got to be able to get in, have a real business, show the sweat equity, prove that someone's willing to pay you for it. And once that happens, you've got a long line of people that invest in that tomorrow. But these are not idea investors. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah, and I think what's sort of created this negative conversation or negative angle is and we talked before the mic turned on about, the exception, like the unicorn conversation.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times in like the entrepreneurial world, we think of like Silicon Valley, which there are so many, venture capitalist companies that are looking, VC firms that are looking to throw money at you, that maybe the sweat equity isn't as necessary.
Yeah.
But for our listeners, you probably aren't the next Uber. Maybe you are. I don't know.
Maybe.
I mean, who knows? But point being, it doesn't mean you're not going to be successful. It just means that the path to success is not the overnight, just do this, just make this happen. Right. And tying it back to something you mentioned earlier, I so appreciate the comment you made on, we had 5 different LLCs, and I like it's comforting because I think a lot of times people listen to the podcast, their story is like that. It's like I've been grinding away, I've been working. The business I have now is like the 3rd version of what I started with. Yeah. And now I'm finally seeing some daylight. Like I'm finally seeing the success. And I don't fault people for being discouraged in those situations, because what's told to us on social media is, I quit my job and I started the business and it was just amazing.
Right.
I just started it and it just worked.
So the encouragement to the entrepreneurs that are out there, you're either in a corporate job and you'd like to get out, or you're in school, or you're 18, you're whatever it is, you're trying to get to that level. Just know that there's a long list of people that would love to invest in a solution to a problem. All they're asking, and this is me speaking personally because I've talked to them, all they're asking is get the business to a point that someone's willing to pay you money. And if you do that, if we talk about $50,000, $100,000, $500,000, or $1 million, if I can take $1 million and put gas on that and excel it, you'd be surprised how quickly someone will give you cash. It's a friend investing in you, the angel guy over here, that gives you some cash to try to come up with an interesting idea. And that's really hard money to get. And you're going to be giving away a ton of equity. And so you got to be careful when you give away half your company or 60% of your company. And that's just the realities of the things in front of you. And most entrepreneurs don't think of it that way, at least early on, until they finally get it.
We live in a college town. Yeah. I really love our business college. We have a office of entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
That I wish that had been there when I was in school here.
Right. Would be cool.
And it does seem like, or let me rephrase this. Do you ever find yourself in conversations with, that 20, 21, 22-year-old person who's wide-eyed and bushy-tailed, and they're just so optimistic about the entrepreneurial world? I want to go start a business. And then they hear your story about, we kind of grinded for 2, 3, 4 years, and we were putting our own money into it, and it cost this much money. Because I find myself in these conversations like, and maybe I come across too negative. I don't know, but I see like the wonder start to dissipate in their eyes, and they're like, "Oh, that sounds hard."
Well, there's the hard part of it, and then we'll have these life lessons or these verses or these things we live on, and part of it for me is this concept of deselecting. Is that everyone has like 10 great things. You've got to deselect. Editing is hard. If you're a photographer, if you're a graphics person, to edit down is difficult. If you're an apparel person or a fashion designer, editing is difficult. Well, business is the same way. You come, I've got these ideas, and my idea is really, really broad. And I'm saying, no, we need to edit it down to get it to its purest form, and let's go drive that. Yeah, but I've got this and this. So one of my quotes that I tell people is that, man, stay within your rails and don't chase shiny objects. And so many of us, I got this idea and this. I got a folder of ideas. Well, you and 100 other people have the ideas, and I'm not saying it's not a brilliant idea, but to be an executor, to be an operator is different. And so you might have to bring a partner on that can help you launch the idea, because you're just an idea generator. That's okay, but you may never get there. Or you're an operator and you're so focused, you can't think broadly. So sometimes as an entrepreneur, you got to say, listen, you might need another person to come alongside. People forget that this kid named Zuckerberg, they brought an adult into the room, Sheryl Sandberg. You know what she did? She was the adult. She scaled the heck out of that company. And he was the idea guy, and you could see it. And it's like, whoa. Someone has to run this thing. And so that's okay. And so I think the business school, one of the last ones they sent me, this person, and he's probably going to listen to this, and I'll get so busted because he's like, I did this. You can't believe. But you'll never. His idea was college students didn't want to take their trash out to the dumpster. They were in apartments.
Okay.
So they wanted to put their trash outside their door. Yeah. And he said, I think I could have a business where I could go pick up the trash and put it in the dumpster for them. Yeah. It's parents' money. I mean, it's $5 a month, $10 a month, $20 a month. He said, so I'm going to raise money, and they had this massive business plan. People are like, this is the best idea. You could scale this across all these colleges and all these college students. And I said, well, how much money you're making today? Well, I'm not doing it yet. I'm like, well, why aren't you picking up? I said, you could go to an apartment complex tomorrow. Yeah. And you could manually do this. You're like, well, I don't want to pick up garbage. I'm like, dude. He was like, oh. And I don't think he ever. Yeah. But it was just a really interesting idea. And he said, I'm meeting a need. I'm doing exactly what you said, Rick. Yeah. Yeah, but you're not an executor. He operationally, he was never going to go forward. And smart guy, really creative. Yeah. But he needed a partner.
Yeah, and I think that tactical, that practicality is something that isn't always so sexy to talk about.
No.
Because when we talk about entrepreneurship, it's like the big dream, the aspirations. Right, it's so fun, and maybe I even quit my job. This is so great. And then you start talking about like, okay, but how are you going to do it? What's it going to look like? Right. What have you already sold? And these things can feel gunky and slow, but it's an important piece of the puzzle, like you said. Right. Now, what's your advice for the young, not age young, but like the newer entrepreneur, the newer business owner in being able to distinguish between what I need to focus on and what is a distraction? Because you mentioned the shiny object, and going back to even your story, you had 5 businesses. You could have very easily said, oh, well, that's going to be a fad, the app store, that's not really something we need to worry about. And you could have missed it. Right. So what's the advice on how do I know something is a distraction, and how do I know it's an opportunity?
Right. And so we'll talk about, in the tech world, it's called favors and features. Okay. You got a big client coming in and they want to do A, B, and C. And you said, yes, I'm going to change my product because it's exactly what they want, because this is a feature I'm going to sell everyone. Then you go talk to your other 200 customers and you realize they didn't all want the feature. But you're doing a favor. That's okay. Do a favor. All day long, do favors, because your big client needs a favor, but it's not a feature. Yeah. And a lot of times your big clients don't want these features because they want something customized. So if you think about the practical part of it for us, the first thing I tell people, you need to differentiate between, am I creating a lifestyle business, a small business owner, or am I an entrepreneur that's like changing and just creating this amazing thing over here? And it ties into that concept of, man, but I've got all these things I want to do and all these amazing things that are coming in front of me, and I've got all these people telling me, I'm like, slow down. Is this a lifestyle business and you're wanting to do favors for these customers and grow deep? Or is this a scalable thing where you want to do a ton of feet and drive this really broad conversation? And it's okay to say you're a small business person, not an entrepreneur. Because you're running a restaurant or other business, but the entrepreneur is a little bit different. So they wrestle with that. So no, I'm an entrepreneur. Great. Now I want to go scale this. I've got all these ideas. I said, okay, you've got to come back in and kind of bring your rails in and say, gosh, be completely creative within the rails. And I don't think your rails have to get down between 1 and 3, but they can't be 1 in 1,000. Yeah. So, but within the 1 in 5 and 1 in 10, be super, super creative. But when the next idea comes out here, just park it because you have to stay focused within these rails. And then the other kind of life quote I tell people is that you've got to let your yes be yes and your no be no. Don't live in the world of maybe. The other killer I see for entrepreneurs is like, well, maybe we'll do that. Well, let's talk about this. Well, we could talk, and then all of a sudden, the organization is like, well, what are we focused on? I thought we were going to solve this problem. Now we've got all these interesting things. So an entrepreneur has to have these virtual files of ideas that are yes, not now. No, not now. Not maybe, because maybe just made it get really, really broad rails and no one knows what's going on in the organization. And editing is really, really hard. Yeah. And sometimes your clients help you edit. They tell you, I don't want to buy it. Sometimes it is a friend that comes in and says, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And there are times you just look at it practically and the good dollar speaks. I've got 20 ideas and these 3 are financially viable. Therefore, that helped me edit. But editing is the key to being a successful entrepreneur.
Something I like that you mentioned too is, the perks aren't just simply the momentum of your business, but you mentioned the people in your organization.
Yeah.
They have clarity around like, what do we do? What are we selling? And this, I think for the people listening, it can seem a bit silly to say that you can have a business where your employees aren't even really clear on what you ultimately do. Mm-hmm. But I think we've all, in some form or another, been in that business where we've been like, hey, what is our department doing? Like, we're lost. Like, what is going on here?
Yeah, and I believe the power of threes. And so history that I tell you 3 things 7 times, and eventually you remember what I just told you, right?
Yeah.
And so with each one of the departments of the organization, I'm pushing on saying, what is your credo? What is the clarity so that your team knows I basically filter or vet everything through these 2 or 3 things?
Yeah.
And so if you're in the content business, how are you creating content? Okay. Mm-hmm. How are you taking that and you're capitalizing on that content and you're scaling it? And then how do you take that content and say, gosh, after I've scaled it, how do I repurpose it? So you're creating, scaling, and repurposing. I said, well, what are we focused on? Are we creating something? And so you see those little 3s going through. So as a leader, forget about the product guy that's the engineer that has to design the product. But as an entrepreneur, as a leader, the editing and the simplification allows your organization to run well and feel really good. It's the analogy people use of a board game. No one wants to play a board game if you change the rules all the time. Yeah. Are you a Monopoly guy?
It's that I don't think I've played that one in a while, but I am a rule stickler though.
But think about Monopoly. Yeah. So when you go to pay the $75, do you put it in the middle? And if you land on free parking, do you get it?
You do get it.
Okay, but that's not a rule.
Is that not the rule?
No, but it's a rule you made up.
That's the house rule.
It's a house rule, right?
But it's annoying when you're in someone else's house.
Right.
And they keep changing it.
I'm confused. Wait a minute. Yeah. So, hey, I love playing Monopoly. So can we do side deals? Can I trade properties with you?
Yeah.
Oh, it's a house. Oh, yeah, you can trade property. It's like, well, that's not fair. So what happens in the business world is your team's trying to operate and say, well, give me clarity of rules and let me be super creative. Sports analogy. Is the football field 100 yards or not? Are you out of bounds? Or are you in? I mean, without that, it's just confusion. You take that same conversation as an entrepreneur and say, wow, I've created really pretty rigid rules, amazing principles, and I've told people you have complete autonomy and flexibility and people will thrive. If you change those rules and everything's wishy-washy, they're like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing. And an entrepreneur, that's important to do.
Yeah. And something that's important about this conversation, bringing it back to Field Agent, is it's always special for me when I hear a leader talk about what they've done for their team and how they're sort of like how their philosophy of management, how that plays out. And, you mentioned giving them their own autonomy. The way I think of Field Agent, I think of like Chick-fil-A, for example. Chick-fil-A is statistically does really well in terms of low turnover, retention. They're a leader in their industry in terms of management and culture. And every time I go through the drive-thru, I always ask, hey, so how do you, I'm just curious.
Yeah,
I'm like, is it real? Do you really like it here? And they're always like, yeah, actually, I like it a lot. Well, with Field Agent, I've had many friends who've worked here. Yeah. And so naturally, I'm like, hey, what do you think of your job? And so it's just great. You're talking about this philosophy of leadership that I've had friends confirm and be like, yeah, it's really great. It's really great working here.
That's encouraging.
I want to dig into this though, because we're coming out of a time of COVID where, culture could be a buzzword. It's like, do you care about culture? Yeah, we do ropes courses. We do, pizza party, whatever. Right. And then COVID happened and now everyone's Googling culture. It's like, oh, I don't want my people to quit. I don't know and now we're in the Great Resignation. And so now people, I think it was already a priority for people who knew it was important. Right. But now I feel like the mainstream is really important. Oh, right, I need culture. Talk to me a little bit more. You gave us a little bit of a peek on your management philosophy. I'd love to hear more because you got 100 employees. Again, my anecdotal data is that people really like it here. Our first conversation, we talked about your team a little bit, and I walked away thinking like, man, it seems like a great boss. What is your leadership philosophy? Like, how have you built this culture here at Field Agent?
Yeah, I think so. Part of it starts with that. It is that philosophy, if you will, of given the chance, people will do the right thing. Given the right rails, they can excel. And so we come in and try to eliminate the barriers or the kind of the gates or issues with a workplace environment that people just don't like to. It just feels yucky, or I'm more concerned. And so we started eliminating things, editing again. So the elimination would be, let's get rid of some hierarchy things. Let's make sure that you have autonomy to do the work that you're looking for. Let's make sure that we understand with principles, and we give complete clarity to finances and how our company runs. And they're like, wow, I'm not left in the dark, and I kind of feel where things are going. So you kind of do those things to play out. But I think the more important thing for our organization, and this gets into people you've talked to that have worked here or people that have left here, the premise is, if I spend time with you today and I'm either mentoring you, discipling you, or I'm coaching you, and you make a decision to go to another company, did the relationship break at that time, or does the relationship continue? And people are like, well, I don't know. I'm not working here anymore. I said, well, so we call people that leave here alumni.
Sure.
Okay. And so, well, if I was pouring into you today and you went to another company tomorrow and I stopped talking to you, I guess it wasn't very genuine when you were here. And they're like, huh. So our encouragement is that if you're ready to move on, as it's one example, ready to move on, come to me and let me help you.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, we've had probably 4 or 5 alumni come back and re-engage, and they're working for us again.
Yeah.
Because they've gone out, spent 2 years, one person spent 4 years, had a great experience over there, learned a bunch, and wanted to come back in a different level here and be a part of this culture thing again. But that's that management philosophy of providing a very, not safe, but a very engaging place to work, give people the autonomy they need, and be genuine in the relationship, and the work widget stuff will take care of itself. I mean, this business isn't that hard. I mean, you can figure it out. But then people are coming in and they're not stressed out about how am I going to be treated. They're not stressed out about, well, I wonder what someone thinks, and politically, is this going to work out okay? And I wonder what they're thinking about me. But we just did a really good job of eliminating that. Now, if you take that premise and you throw in COVID, we all figured out, right, that you could work from anywhere. Least of our worries. We could all work, and listen, everyone's got a MacBook, and you take the MacBook home and take your screen, and we got a stand-up table. The people took those home, you could do work. But what we realize is that culture has a shelf life of about 18 months, and then it starts to go bad. It's not like a Twinkie that has an unlimited shelf life, right? It's not that way. But it's also not like bread, which gives you a few weeks. So we looked at the culture piece. So after a year, the culture was still there. Everything was great. And then you started hiring people who've never experienced the culture, and they're trying to figure things out.
Yeah.
And then you add some distance into it, and it's like, gosh, we haven't had real good team meetings. And in about 18 months, we realized we've got to rethink how we engage and celebrate this culture thing in a remote world, and what does that look like? And that was hard. And I don't think we've necessarily figured it out yet, but we've gotten to a pretty good place. So the culture thing, for all the folks who are listening here today, don't be naive to think you can work the next 2 or 3 years and get a bunch of work done. Your business is going to be okay. The culture is going to struggle with it, and you got to figure it out.
Well, and it's constant, right? I mean, I have a customer of my own who, we had a conversation a few weeks ago, and she was like, I feel like I have worked on culture for like 5 years now. And it just it's just never ending, And I think that's it, is because people, we as people, we just are, I think so rocked by whatever the latest circumstances that it, you have to give constant attention to it. But something else that you said that I really appreciated was, I love your, the natural trust you give your people, because you said specifically that, and now I'm going to butcher it now, I'm thinking back to it, but basically that, you give people the space to do what they need to do, and they're going to do the right thing.
We want to keep honest people honest.
And not everyone feels that way as a manager.
Oh, no. Thumbs are on them. Right.
Exactly. I've talked to business leaders who, they talk about micromanaging, and they're proud as a micromanager. And you say, well, why do you do that? And they're like, well, if I don't, they're not going to get any work done. And it's like, well, why did you hire them then? If that's if that's really the case.
It is.
But I think you're talking about, and for people who are listening to the podcast, I think sometimes this conversation can feel a little intangible when you talk about like psychologically safe workplaces, emotionally healthy workplaces. But there's a lot of research out there on how people, they thrive when their basic needs are met. And one of our basic needs is, putting it very simply, to not be screamed at by a boss. I sat down, I had a lunch meeting with the guy one time who he had just gotten back from a local business, a local name brand business, where his boss had literally screamed at him. And this was a grown man crying because he had never been spoken to like that before. And I was so disturbed by it that I didn't tell him he needed to quit, but I was like, no one needs to work in that kind of environment. And so, like, obviously people listening, you're probably, checking the box, get and scream at my employees today. But I think your philosophy is really interesting. And more importantly, it's really healthy for your employees of that implicit trust, which is rare.
It is a trust, but so here's the simple principle we live by here. Now, we're in this this old vault, this old Coca-Cola bottling plant. We're literally in a place that has a safe. And so we've kind of locked the door. We hope it's going to open up or we're in big trouble because there's no food in here. Right?
You'll never see this podcast.
But a principle that we have is that nothing good happens behind closed doors without a window. So this is the only room in this entire place that doesn't have a window. And my point is that you should be able to have a meeting in complete privacy, but why do you need the shade pulled? I mean, what's so private? And so then people are like, oh, so I don't mind going in that room because I know someone's not going to stand up on a chair and yell at me and say, oh, I didn't do that. No, it's all open. Well, I felt a little bit awkward. Well, you don't feel awkward because everyone sees. Well, what about you, Rick? Well, I sit in an office that's probably 16 by 18 feet with 4 other people. We're all crammed in there.
Yeah.
And people can look at my screen all day long and see what I do. And it's like, well, but I like more privacy. But our principle is nothing good happens in secret, right? And so you need to be completely open in this work world. Now, there are places you can go for a private phone call and all those things happen. But for the most part, people are like, oh, I don't feel creepy here. It feels really good and open here. And you can't put a price on that. And people are like, I just like the vibe here. And because that's a principle we operate under.
Yeah. Now, you've mentioned the word principle a few times. Are we talking like core values? Is this?
You could go into the core value piece, but we have some underlying principles that are really important that aren't plastered on walls that we keep repeating over and over again. One of those is, again, keeping honest people honest. I trust you implicitly, but there's no reason why you don't have your hand on $1 million right now because I don't want to tempt you. Well, oh, so you don't trust me? No. I'm just saying, for me personally, I have checks and balances in my life. I'm going to keep honest people. I'm going to keep honest people honest, right? And nothing good happens behind a closed. These are these principles that happen, right? I'll let your yes be yes and your no be no. Don't live in the world of maybe. That's just a principle. It's like, well, maybe we could do that. I said, hold on. I had a guy I was meeting with probably 5 years ago, wanted to go through this whole mentorship thing. I said, sure, let's do Thursdays at 7. He said, okay, I'll put you down as a definite maybe. I said, what? He said, oh, yeah, I got you down on my calendar as a definite maybe. I said, what's a definite maybe? He said, well, if something else comes up, I'll have to cancel. I'm like, well, first lesson.
Yeah.
This is never going to happen.
Yeah.
But see, even that mentality of the principles we operate is that people aren't like, yeah, I'll try to get to that. Just say no or yes in a week. And so those principles like, wow, I can depend on Blake because I know when he says yes, he's going to do it. And if he says no, it's not personal. It's just, I can't do that.
Right.
And that's not on the wall anywhere. But we just pound it into people. Maybe is your worst nightmare. Because how do I operate? Well, maybe he's going to do it. Should I wait? I don't know. You think you'll get it done? Well, should I check in on him? I mean, what a waste of time.
Right.
Versus
slow.
Yes, Tuesday at 2.
Yeah.
All right. And then that principle people begin to live is like, wow, I operate pretty well under that principle.
Well, and you're talking about which you're pointing out really my ultimate issue with core values, which is that many times they're just a glorified marketing thing.
And we have them. Listen, we have our core values.
I'm not anti-value. I'm just, it's kind of like it's the difference between the whole point. So here's a great way to backdrop this is I was talking to a guy who said, man, I'm trying to get my values put together. And I said, well, why are you wanting to do that? And he talked about, well, I want my employees to understand like what we stand for, what drives us. And I was like, okay, that's the right conversation. I was in a local business where they had their values on the wall, and I said, "Hey, that's a great list." And she goes, "Oh yeah, some marketing company put that up. We don't."
Oh.
It's kind of like, okay, that's the disconnect.
That hurts. Yeah.
But something I appreciate you're mentioning though is you're talking about implying trust, but marrying that with keeping people honest, which I think of as like accountability.
It is.
And many leaders are trying to figure out that balance of how do I hold people accountable in a way that doesn't feel oppressive and also give that implicit trust. And it sounds like you've navigated that balance well.
Yeah, do it pretty well. But here's an example that we have operations meetings. In the operations meeting, we're asking people to really talk about three things. As a director coming to an ops meeting, I need you to give me people success. Okay. I don't get to spend time with all 100 folks, and I want to know who was the champion this week and who was doing X, and just give me just a nugget so I can say, wow, this organization, I can see where people are working. The second piece is KPIs. Everyone's got 2 or 3 key measures. I just need to know the key measures and how well you're doing. And the third piece is bad news needs to travel fast. I should have already known about it. But it gives you a chance to talk about problems you're working through, and then every ops person can hear that. And it's 4 or 5 minutes each. You kind of walk through it. And the principle of having that is that now as the 15 directors are sitting here, you now have a chance to go to Blake and say, hey, John over here said you just nailed that customer call. Way to go. And you're like, wow. Now you've got these KPIs. You walk up and say, hey, you hit that number.
Yeah.
And it's so those principles of being able to do these, it's people, business, right? It's people, math, and you got problems you have to solve. And if the math is right and the people are right, you can work through some problems. But if I got people issues and math, those 3 core things, everything is driven by that. And so that's how we run our business. It's people, math, and what problems do I have to solve?
Yeah. Well, Rick, this has been an awesome conversation. We're at the end of our conversation. What's happening next with Field Agents? You mentioned the new marketplace.
Yeah.
Obviously you're doing some pretty amazing stuff with Field Agent. What do people need to know moving forward?
Yeah, if you're an entrepreneur out there today and you're not trying to make an extra $2 or $3, and that's the Field Agent download the app side. But if you're an entrepreneur today, small business person, whatever it may be, we launched a new marketplace in January that allows you to come in and do a one-stop shop and be able to purchase products, and products being like a service that's been productized that helps you win at retail. By the time this podcast is aired, in a little bit, we will have rebranded and relaunched. So in June of this year, pretty exciting stuff. You're the first guy I'm telling.
Oh my gosh, I'm already feeling like the weight of this. Yeah, this is big.
We are rebranding and relaunching our marketplace to be not only more cohesive and broader in scope, but really to have that Amazon effect that we're all dealing with in a B2C standpoint, to bring those features and engagement in. And so we're pretty excited about that. So look for new news in the Field Agent world around a brand new marketplace that's branded differently coming in June.
Great.
And I'll make sure I'll hit you with that so you can put the right link up when this baby goes live. But that's the exciting thing that's in front of us. And all this is driven by our customers asking us for X. And if we've listened to our customers well, we're making sure that we have what's the problem market fit we've had for years, the product market fit, absolutely. We've struggled with, and now we think we're in a great shape to have a platform or a marketplace market fit. And that platform market fit is right there, and that's what you're going to see in June.
It's great.
So we're excited.
It's amazing stuff. I'll make sure I put the relevant links for our listeners in the episode description. And then do you use LinkedIn? Can people, if they want to reach out to you?
Way. Just Rick West, the Field Agent guy. I'm pretty easy to find on LinkedIn. DM me there. Listen, I'm a pretty good conversation guy, so you'd be surprised what I would say yes to. So reach out there.
So I'll link your LinkedIn profile also in the description as well. And Rick, it's been amazing. I so appreciate you coming on today. It's been a great episode.
Really enjoyed it. Look forward to next time.
Of course. Rick West on the podcast today. Check out more at fieldagent.com. Also, like I mentioned, we'll put
fieldagent.net.
Excuse me.
I just edited .net. We're one of those guys.
Yeah. So let's try that again. Rick West on the podcast. You can find out more at fieldagent.net. I'm also going to put the link to his LinkedIn and also that new marketplace. It's going to be the episode description as well. And hey, if you've been listening to this episode and you like the podcast, what the heck you waiting on? Click the subscribe button, click the follow button so we can keep bringing you good advice wherever you are. And don't forget, if you want to support the podcast, you can check out our Patreon. It's at patreon.com/goodadvice. And I so appreciate those of you who are supporting the podcast on a daily basis. Hey, that's all we got for you today. Thanks for listening. And that's today's Good Advice. We'll see you.